going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Tristan, the host of the Ambition Podcast. Welcome back to another episode, and today I have a very special guest for you guys here on the podcast, which is Jonathan Summers. He is the Senior Director of Digital Partnerships and Esports Operations at the Cleveland Cavaliers. Say what's up, Jonathan.
How are you?
So, obviously, again, thank you so much for taking the time to come onto the podcast and everything. And kind of I want to get a little bit of a background as to you, and especially for, the people who may not necessarily know a lot about you and maybe how you got into something like the NBA as well as, this crazy journey into esports.
Sure. So as you alluded to in my title, I'm our Senior Director of Digital Partnerships and Esports Operations, the former of which was my initial role at the Cavaliers, where I began in October of 2016. And that entails basically strategizing and monetizing all of our digital and social assets across the Cavaliers, as well as our minor league hockey AHL affiliate, Cleveland Monsters, and our G League franchise, Canton Charge. And I was in that role and continue in that role to this day. And my new responsibilities, inclusive of esports, began in the spring of 2017 when the Cleveland Cavaliers joined the NBA 2K League, which has just completed its second season, and the third season kicks off in the spring of 2020.
Okay, wonderful. So, kind of talk about how first you got into the NBA. Were you a traditional sports fan? Had you always been maybe a Cleveland Cavaliers fan? Or, how did that whole, process kind of go about?
Sure. So, born and raised here in Cleveland, Ohio. Left after high school to go away to school and work and live elsewhere for most of my adult life. But obviously, a Cavs fan and Cleveland sports fan throughout my childhood and to this day. And the opportunity came to move back home to the land I grew up in and get a job and work for my favorite sports franchise, being the Cleveland Cavaliers. So, been a fan my whole life, and it's really a dream come true to be able to work for them now.
Yeah, definitely. So, obviously, you kind of started in, the esports operations for what many, of us in the esports industry known as the Cavs Legion and everything. Kind of talk about how that process was kind of started. Did you have any, I would say, from the beginning, direction or any help in creating what really it's known as today?
Yeah, so, we as I said, we raised our hand, if you will, to join the NBA 2K League, and myself, along with a now former colleague, were given the task of spearheading our basically creation of an esports franchise, if you will, starting from scratch. And, a lot of traditional sports properties have gotten involved mainly at the ownership investment level in the esports space, but the opportunity to fully own and operate a professional esports franchise was obviously very exciting to us as an organization. So, I am not an avid gamer myself. I don't come from esports. I didn't play professionally or anything of that kind. But when I started working within the esports landscape, it became very apparent to me the opportunity that it has for our organization across the greater sports landscape in terms of fan development, fan outreach, and just really our ability as an organization now to open up new doors and reach new fans through gaming.
Yeah, definitely. So, obviously, the last decade has kind of been a shift, at least from what I've seen in the esports industry, from the more, endemic to, again, the more traditional sports model that we're seeing. Do you see any similarities between, the verticals of esports and, traditional sports coming from, obviously, being, a Cavs fan for, a majority of your life?
100%. I think that the wall between quote-unquote traditional sports and esports is breaking down daily, if not already completely broken down. And it is tough for folks from the traditional sports side to fully grasp and get their head around the fact that this is a sport, despite the fact that there's, not overly physical activity being exerted. But, when you kind of get past that and realize that this is a competition that requires skill and practice, mental strength, stamina, hand-eye coordination, cognitive skills, etc. it really truly is a sport. And, I would challenge anyone who disagrees with that to take in a professional tournament or competition and see it firsthand. And, I quickly converted to the realization that it is a sport and these are athletes. It's just a new generation of athletes, if you will. So, yes, there is skepticism, but I would say that that's, changing daily, and it's becoming so mainstream at this point that it's almost commonplace now for sports organizations to have involvement in some form or fashion with esports.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously you guys have definitely seen, a lot of success, and, the Cavs Legion has a lot of, a lot of, big supporters out there, and everything. What is it like kind of seeing that growth, because obviously the NBA 2K kind of started, I want to say a year or two, 2 years ago, sorry. So what is that, kind of looked like from your side? Has the growth of this thing really been something that you guys are proud of?
Absolutely, like 100%. And like I mentioned earlier, the opportunity to create a sports franchise from scratch is rare. You rarely see that now. NBA, NFL, MLB, even to the most part MLS. These franchises are established.
Yeah.
So the task with going out into a city of Cleveland and Northeast Ohio and our region as a whole and introduce a new sports franchise is not an opportunity that comes along often. And obviously, on day one, nobody knew who we were. And now it's been 2+ years, and, our players get recognized when they're out in the city. I'll get comments when I'm out in the city wearing Cavs Legion apparel. People come up to me, tell me that they're fans. When we take our team out into the community to meet and play with kids and interact with fans, they're getting countless photos and selfies taken with them, and our guys are asked for their autograph.
Oh, wow.
Our social following is, up over, I think it's 55, 60,000 now. So, yes, it's come leaps and bounds. It's obviously not a finished product, but to be where it is, considering where we started, where, we were in a conference room devising what the name of the franchise and what the logo would be, to now, I've seen kids around Cleveland wearing Cavs Legion apparel. It's very exciting.
Yeah, that definitely has to be extremely rewarding. Myself, I'm an esports organization owner, and occasionally, like if I'm out in an event or even when traveling, sometimes people will actually see me wearing my jersey and they'll recognize the jersey, or they'll recognize something about me, and it's kind of rewarding at the same time to kind of see that happening. Now, also, you happen to manage kind of the relationship with 100 Thieves and the North American LCS. Kind of talk about how that process started, because obviously the LCS is kind of referred to as the crown jewel of League of Legends and esports. What was that like?
Yeah, so just to clarify, I really manage the relationship between the two organizations. We don't fully own and operate 100 Thieves.
Yeah.
Our owner is an investor within 100 Thieves. So they have an amazing staff. John Robinson, their president, is a friend of mine, and they just do incredible work. And him and Nate Schott have absolutely crushed it in terms of creating this organization and brand that they have over the past few years. So I consider myself very fortunate to know those gentlemen, to have been somewhat involved in the early stages of it. But really, they did it themselves. They've done all the heavy work, and we just try to draft off of them. They're at that, tier 1 level, playing the top game in the world. And so we really just observe what they do, whether it be through apparel or content or, player acquisitions, whatever the case may be. We really take note and talk to them and get advice from them and try to draft off of them. So we're fortunate in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, myself, it's kind of it's kind of funny because my YouTube career, and as well my subsequent esports ownership career kind of started because I fell into love with Optic Gaming and what Nadeshot was doing at the time. So it's always been fun to watch his journey over the 7 or 8 years since I found Optic, and Nadeshot when he was in his prime, and now to like this day. And it's kind of it's really fun. I've met him on a couple different occasions, and he is one of the nicest, most humble people ever.
Yeah, Matt's fantastic.
So obviously, you did talk a little bit about, in your normal responsibilities, you kind of lead the strategic planning of everything, and what does that kind of look like? Because I know a lot of people, in a traditional business or in esports business, really don't understand how to fully grasp what that is like, and then as well kind of understand how to do so well with it.
Yeah, and just to clarify, so you're asking just about setting the course and strategy for the franchise.
Yes.
Yeah, it's obviously beneficial to be a member of the Cavaliers and see how a professional sports franchise runs on a daily basis. We have, over 250 employees within the Cavaliers, Can Charge, and Cleveland Monsters. So we have all of the departments that one would assume but not think of on a daily basis. We have marketing and finance and HR and community relations and communications and PR and sales and ticket sales, and on and on. We have so many different departments and so many smart people working on so many projects for the Cavs and Monsters in Charge that it would be foolish not to apply those learnings and to tap into those resources and people for Cavs Legion. So, not every esports, operations lead can walk across the hallway in their office and talk to someone about a marketing question with someone who runs marketing for an NBA franchise.
Yeah.
So, I try my best, and my team, my staff, we try our best to integrate ourselves as much as possible within the larger organization, because we know that that's the quickest way to get to where we need to get to.
Yeah, definitely. As well, like you touched on, you kind of handle with the implementation of digital and social media elements. What kind of platforms does that look like? What kind of goes into that? And how rewarding and also how challenging is it at the same time? Because essentially, like you just touched on, there's so many different departments. So obviously, marketing must be working on one part. There's other departments working on things. What is that kind of like?
It's just a lot of collaboration. It can be a double-edged sword. It can be great, obviously, because you have so many resources, and it can be a little bit challenging at times because we have so much going on against so many sports properties that, you need to be precise in the time that you ask of these colleagues and what it is you're asking of them. We have to realize that not everybody has, 2, 3, 4 hours on an average day to help out on a Cavs Legion project. So we have to be very precise in what we ask of them and the time we ask. And so we do a lot of behind the scenes work and a lot of prep work internally just amongst the esports team, and try to get it to a point where when we do go out to the large organization with an ask, it's very buttoned up. So it's all really about time management and organization. If you have those two skills, they can take you pretty far if you have the passion to go along with it.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I do want to, kind of touch on and expand with is, obviously you brought up that, there's so many different, again, aspects to, the Cavaliers organization and, the affiliates. And especially, something that we've seen with, the Overwatch League, and now what we're seeing with the Call of Duty League is where they're having these home and away games at certain arenas around the country. Has that ever been something that maybe you guys or maybe the NBA 2K League has kind of considered or looked at as a possibility? Because obviously, you guys are always at the forefront of sports with every possible thing out there. What have you considered that?
In terms of holding events in venues, separate venues?
Holding events, maybe watch parties for fans, and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the NBA 2K League in particular, the regular season matches and most tournaments occur at their studio. So the NBA built a studio in Long Island City, New York, and that is where our team goes every week during the season to compete against the other teams in the league. Season 2 did bring about a few adjustments to that. There was a mid-season tournament held at the HyperX Arena at the Luxor in Vegas.
Okay.
There was another mid-season tournament held at the Fortress at Full Sail University in Orlando. So the league as a whole is definitely trying to branch out beyond New York and get into more local markets. And that's definitely something that we would like to see more of within the league.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's something that I think would kind of be interesting, is to see how the NBA, and each, individual franchise within that, 2K league kind of do things like that, because that's something that in esports we've seen a tremendous amount of growth. And the most notable that comes to mind when it comes to doing those types of, watch parties or just events is the Houston Outlaws out in Texas and everything. So obviously, what has it been like getting into esports, and over the years, kind of slowly learning everything? Because again, as you alluded to, a lot of people, especially big business owners, don't really understand what's so fascinating and just hypnotizing about esports, and especially in today's landscape.
Yeah, for me, it's been interesting, right? Because I think of myself like an old guy at this point, but I'm not too old to forget, where I was gaming as a
Yeah.
kid. So it's not completely new to me. Now I'm not as familiar with a lot of PC games and new games, and I've never played Overwatch or League of Legends or things like that. However, I do understand three important facets, which is one is the scale of the audience. So when you're looking at anything, whether it be NBA, NHL, MLB, whatever, if you put on your business hat for a second and just examine it as a business, there's really three things that are important. The first being scale. How many people are interested in the sport or event? The second would be demographic. Who are these people that are interested? What is their makeup? Where are they located? Etc. And then the third would be time spent. So, when you combine all of these and you look at an average, call it 8 to 28-year-old, and you look at their passion for gaming, you look at the amount of time that they spend on Twitch or YouTube or other platforms, when you kind of combine all of these three things together from a business perspective, it makes all the sense in the world, because this is the type of audience that, Fortune 500 brands and endemic brands, of course, are going after. So, I would say that, you can analyze it in a million different ways, but if you analyze it solely from a business perspective, it makes more sense than, I would say, almost any other sport out there, probably besides soccer and basketball, in terms of future growth potential, in addition to the current state of affairs. So, we're very bullish on the future of esports. It's been said before, and we agree that we believe that the three main sports of the future are probably going to be, soccer, basketball, and esports, because that is where kids' attention spans are going nowadays. And, the old adage is don't skate to where the puck is, skate to where the puck is going. And the puck is going towards a digital first, mobile first, young audience who consumes gaming not just to play, but to also watch. And so if this is where the personal habits and time spent is of this large scale of 8 to 28-year-olds, then obviously from a business sense, this is the right space to be in.
Yeah, definitely. Now, one of the things that I personally always have wondered is very similar to that of with the Cavaliers, and how the basketball team has certain rivalries with certain franchises within the NBA. Is that kind of the same within the 2K league? Because obviously there's franchises like the Golden Guardians, which is owned by the Warriors, and is there any sort of that that same resemblance of a rivalry? And what is kind of the fan expression when those type of rivalries do happen? From time to time.
Yeah, they do. I would say that the NBA rivals for the Cavaliers don't necessarily translate into the 2K League. We had a great run there with the Cavs, of course, of four straight finals against the Warriors. I wouldn't say that really translated into us versus Warriors gaming in the 2K League. I think that rivalries just form organically. We have teams in the 2K League that we take a little joy in beating more than others.
Yeah.
And I won't name them, of course, but it's each league in game kind of holds rivalries of its own, whether it be because one player was traded from one team to another, or was drafted by another team, or had something to say about a player on another team. Any reason you would see a rivalry in traditional sports is kind of the reason that we have rivalries. But yes, there are definitely teams that we consider rivals, and hopefully in season 3 we can succeed over them.
Yeah, definitely. Now, also, kind of expanding on that, there are other NBA franchises that, with their esports divisions and their franchises and stuff, have also branched into other games out there and so forth. Is that something you guys have maybe considered? Expanding the Cavs Legion into other games out there.
So it is definitely something we've considered, but it's not something that we are going to pursue at this time. I think that 100 Thieves does a phenomenal job of spreading their wings into, Fortnite, Counter-Strike, obviously League of Legends, etc. So we feel that just at an organizational level, based on our ownership's investment in that franchise, that if there were to be, an Overwatch team, a Call of Duty team, whatever the case may be, that it would most likely be through 100 Thieves. Now, that being said, we recognize that, we're not necessarily going to be able to get involved in any and all other games. So what we've done is we've opened up our facility. So we have what's called Cavs Legion Lair, lit by TCP, and it's a 2,700 square foot gaming facility here in Cleveland, and it serves 2 dual purposes. One is it is the home of and practice facility of our 2K team, Cavs Legion. So for the 6 months that the guys are in Cleveland, that's where they go and practice and scrim and watch video and whiteboard every single day that they're not competing. So that's that. But aside from that, and in particular when the guys are not in Cleveland, what we plan on doing and are in the early stages of doing is opening up this facility to any and all esports games for a variety of functions. So whether it be tournaments, watch parties, private rentals, birthday parties, youth groups, educational seminars, summer camps, what have you. That's what Cavs Legion Lair is going to do. And we're going to kick that off in a big way in 2020. And we've had some dry runs already with private rentals and birthday parties. And, the reason I say all this is to bring it back to your question of, we're not going to create a Call of Duty team. We're not going to spend the 25, 30 million franchise fee and set up a team. But you know what? We can throw a Call of Duty tournament at the Legion Lair. We can throw a Call of Duty watch party at the Legion Lair. And the same goes for Fortnite and Apex and Rocket League and Overwatch and Call of Duty and on it goes. So, we're not just, pigeonholing ourselves into being an organization that's only involved in 2K. What the Legion Lair is doing is it's kind of opening the door for us to kind of, quote, scratch that itch of other games and give the Northeast Ohio gaming community who's interested in other games an outlet and a location to play and watch those other titles.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I do want to go a little bit, into your past before Cleveland. You worked at Twitter and iHeartMedia. What was that experience like? Coming from companies like that are kind of at the forefront of digital media and entertainment and so forth in those respected industries.
Yeah, no, it's been very, very helpful. I had a few stops prior to being in Cleveland. I was in Chicago for 12 years, and I kind of cut my teeth in the digital space at AOL back when AOL was AOL, and it was a real big deal. And that's how I kind of broke into digital media. And from there, I went on to ESPN and helped lead our ESPN Deportes Spanish language arm of ESPN throughout the Central region. That really afforded me the ability to kind of, add more tools to the toolbox, right? So at AOL, I learned digital, and then I went to ESPN and I learned about print and radio and TV, which I had never worked in before in addition to digital. And from there, I went to Twitter and I kind of learned about social media. And from there, I went to iHeartMedia and I learned about music and streaming and podcasting and live events and concerts. And my goal was always to take all of these tools and, kind of round out my skill set and knowledge base. And I brought all of that with me back home to Cleveland and for the digital partnerships role and now the esports operations role. So I definitely don't think I could do what I do or know what I know if I hadn't had those stops. And I think it's healthy for, people, especially as they're starting early on in their career, to maybe move around, find their fit, and learn a little bit, and hopefully eventually settle into a long-term fulfilling career, which I found back home here with the Cavaliers.
Yeah, that was actually... one of the next things I was going to kind of ask was about, if you think that taking these steps along the way really would help, the average person maybe going in and out of, going out of college and into, the traditional business landscape and trying to really harness their growth, because that's something that it's very difficult these days for a lot of people to really kind of grow their skill set after they leave college, and find these roles that obviously you've kind of have been very lucky and very skilled to get in your career. What is your kind of perspective on that? Do you think that taking that route kind of helps someone?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's no one size fits all, and everyone has their own path and story. So what worked for me obviously doesn't have to work for anyone else. But the way I think of it is, as you hear and learn more about youth sports, and there are certain parents who put a soccer ball in their kids' hands and only let them play soccer and coach them on soccer, from the age of 5 to 20, hoping that they become a professional player and get a scholarship, etc. There's a lot of research, and there are a lot of people who think on the other side of the coin that it's important to have a rounded skill set and to play other sports and develop other skills. If you played baseball, that could increase your hand-eye coordination, which could help if you're a goalie in soccer. So, the same premise to me, I firmly believe in the career path where if I, only worked at AOL or if I only worked at ESPN and never got involved with social and music, it wouldn't have gotten me to where I am today. I think that any job whatsoever should teach you some skill set or some learnings. I grew up in the restaurant business. My dad owned restaurants when I was a child, so I've worked in every position there is in the restaurant business. And I don't work in the restaurant business now, but working in the customer service business helps you with how to deal with angry or upset people, or how to fix an error when it's your fault, how to fix an error when it's somebody else's fault. There's just so many lessons you learn just from being a waiter or a busboy, etc., that it sounds silly, but is applicable today, to the point where when I go into a meeting and if we messed up in some way and I need to right a wrong with a partner, I'll take those learnings from when I was a waiter and we got someone's food order wrong. And I know that sounds silly, but those are the things that if you learn early on in your life, just how to deal with people, how to read people, how to handle situations, they all pay off in the long run.
Yeah, definitely. And I think those are the type of qualities that I think we see more of in today's landscape with people coming out of college, that they're more empowered and more innovative than ever. And it's truly fascinating. To really kind of see what that it will look like. Obviously, going into the new decade. So, as far as things go, also...
I would just add to that, a thought is, esports, being the topic of discussion on this podcast, is obviously a digital-first ecosystem, if you will. And in today's day and age, a lot of youth are, they're growing up, I don't want to sound like the old guy, get off my lawn, but it's a lot of FaceTime or text messaging or WhatsApp. There's less in-person communication than there was, 10, 20 years ago. I mean, that much is irrefutable. And what I've seen is I come across a lot of professionals in the esports landscape who are absolute geniuses, just geniuses about esports. And they could tell you who won PUBG and where the next League of Legends Worlds is. And they can tell you anything you want to know about a computer or a game, that's fine. But if you put them in a room with a partner who was unhappy, they don't have that experience. They don't know how to deal with an unhappy partner, or if, a contract has an error in it, and they need to explain it to somebody. So, real life situations, real life problems are eventually going to filter and make their way into esports. And you can't hide behind a phone. You can't hide behind a computer screen just because it's esports. You got to still have that. You still have to touch and feel the real world. And so that's what I would kind of communicate to, anyone who's listening to this and is young and starting off in the esports space is, get out from just the computer and talk to people and work on projects and collaborate with others and problem solve, because those are all skills that you're going to need.
Yeah, definitely. And this is just a hypothetical question. Are you guys ever looking for people to really, help out? And obviously, especially because, again, esports is always growing and evolving and innovating, and, that obviously is going to need help in the future. Is that ever something you guys kind of look at?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it would be silly of us to not always keep our eyes and ears open to any great talent that there is. And when you have an open position, you could either, say, I have this position and I'm going to look for someone specifically for this position who's good at it. Or you can just always keep your eyes and ears open to find just really talented, smart, hardworking people who have a passion. And then you just take that and put it in the role that you feel would bring the greatest return. So, technically, we don't have any current job openings at this very second, but I do have a small staff, and you never know in the future if any of them were to depart the organization or if we grow as a franchise and we add more roles to Cavs Legion. I'm always on the lookout for people like that.
Yeah, I just kind of asked that myself because, like, it's ironic. I'm from Los Angeles, and I got into esports living on the East Coast, a number of years ago. And now, like, I'm slowly getting back into, not, well, obviously caring about, esports and all that, getting into digital media and marketing with record labels and so many different things. And so, that was just a question I kind of had to ask, for myself and for anyone else who's ever, obviously looking to maybe support, their, the Cavs Legion or, maybe the Cavs or whatever it may be, So I just kind of had to throw that question out there.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
But, what are you looking forward to in the next decade, with esports? And especially, again, the multiple verticals that there are, again, with, the, in-person, type venues and interactions, as well as just where do you see the industry going over the next, 5-10 years?
No, it's a good question. I think, the easy answer would be to say franchise model, of course, based on what we're seeing from Overwatch and COD. We'll see. I'm not the expert to say whether that's going to work or not. I have no idea. I'm interested to see how that shakes out. I could obviously see it working out and more titles become franchised and more titles have city-based affiliations. I'm interested to see how that shakes out. I'm interested to see just how mainstream esports can get. Ninja is on the cover of ESPN the magazine, I think it was last year.
Yes.
Which would have been unheard of, 2, 3, 5 years ago. What's the next iteration of that? Who's the next, ninja that crosses over into mainstream where the general public would know who he or she is? I think just the crossover ability and appeal to become more mainstream. I think youth integration within schools. We obviously see collegiate programs popping up. It seems like every week, and now that's filtering down to the high school level. I'm of the firm belief that, you'll be able to walk around any major city or town in the near future, and you'll see a high school kid with a varsity jacket on, and it would say, football, basketball, Overwatch, or baseball, track, esports. I think that it's going to be accepted and become a high school sport in the near future, so I'm interested to see that. And I'm interested to see just how the gender breakdown of esports really shakes out. Obviously it's traditionally male-dominated in terms of the competitive landscape, not necessarily from a recreational landscape or from a viewership perspective on Twitch, even though that also, tilts more towards male. But, we see what Gen G has done, for example, with their all-female team. And I'm just interested to see how diverse esports can get from a gender basis, because I think that if it can truly reach that full-on, co-ed potential, I think that would be tremendous because, esports talks all the time about how it's sport. It's a little bit of a different sport because it doesn't necessarily require the same physical attributes. So if that's the case, obviously, women have just as strong, if not greater, mental fortitude and mental strengths and abilities as males. So I would like to see that reflected in the participation of females in competitive esports.
Yeah, definitely. And to touch kind of on that, the cross between mainstream and everything. I know in the Call of Duty space a couple months ago, they had a couple of basketball players, D'Angelo Russell and Karl Anthony Towns, kind of do some participation in Call of Duty pro and amateur event. So I know of that type of crossover that's kind of happening, and I think that was really like the first of its kind for at least the Call of Duty industry, if anything, to at least my knowledge. I guess obviously the final or one of my last final questions is something that recently crossed my mind. If there are one or two books out there that you think any person should read to really grow their mindset and really try to be more innovative, what are those kind of books maybe that you've read and that you would recommend to someone?
Oof, that's a good question. Specific to the esports space?
Just in general.
Ooh, just in general. I think, what's the last one I read? It was it was that Mark Manson book, the bestseller, which is Everything is F. I think that was good. It has nothing to do with esports, but it just, in terms of priority setting, I think that's another topic, worthy of discussion, which is, priorities in life and in your career are important. And that kind of goes hand in hand with time management, because what you find most important in life is what you spend most of your time on in life. It's, anyone can say they value, A, B, and C, but if they're doing, X, Y, and Z, then it's really more, you got to see what people do, not what they say. And to me, that book talked about priorities and not sweating the small things. And if you want to be a great, shoutcaster or a great graphic designer or a video game music score, whatever the case may be, whatever the role you want to pursue in esports, you have to prioritize your life, your health, your wellness first, because, the person who puts in 80 hours a week is not necessarily better than the person who puts in 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
Working harder and working longer doesn't mean you're working better. So prioritizing your priorities, which in turn prioritizes your time, is what's going to, lead to success, in my opinion. And that book really touches on that.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of, asked that question because, like, myself for a long time, like, I never really understood the value in reading business books, and now, like, right now I have a couple different books from, like, the Blackstone Group, and I just bought one or two from Harvard and from Gary Vee, and, like, I plan on knocking those out in the first, like, 3-4 months of the next year. So that's kind of something that I've wondered, and I know a lot of people have always wanted me to ask that question to at least someone on the podcast. So for anyone watching and who heckles me on Twitter about that, mission accomplished. But as far as anythings go, is there anything to the people that are watching or listening to the podcast that you really want to say, maybe shamelessly plug some things, obviously that you're working on, where maybe people can follow you and keep up with the journey and the good work that you guys are doing?
Yeah, sure. So, obviously I'll give a plug here to @CavsLegionGC, which is, the social handle for our team. The social handle for our Legion Layers @LegionLayerTCP. So, people can check out both of those handles. But as far as, parting words of wisdom, I would just say that, what I've noticed in this new kind of young esports generation that's in high school, college, and entering the workforce is there's a lot of focus on what you know, and to bring it back kind of, again, old school mentality. It's also about who you know. And, all it takes sometimes is a little bit of a shove or help in the right direction, and then your talent and passion can carry you the rest of the way. But you can be the smartest guy in the room, but if you're in a room by yourself, what's the point?
Yeah.
So you got to know the right people, you got to connect, and you just got to go for it. I think that, a mantra I always live by, and I tell people all the time, is, before I make any decision, whether it be personal or professional, I always say to myself, what's the worst that can happen?
Exactly.
And if you're sitting there and you want to break into the esports space and you send off, handwritten notes or emails to everyone who works at Epic or Riot or Take-Two or Activision, wherever the case may be, I mean, you just put yourself out there, you try your best, and you spend days and weeks trying to connect and reach out to people on LinkedIn and go to conferences and cold call. You could do all of that, and it could lead to nothing. But the point is, the worst that can happen is that it leads to nothing. There's really no downside to going that extra mile. And I think that, I see a lot of young professionals who, to be frank, are a little bit afraid of rejection, and they don't want to put in the time or the effort because they think it's not going to lead to anything. And I tell them all the time, well, if it leads nowhere, you're where you are right now. But if it works, think about the upside. So just go for it. Just try your best. Network, reach people. Call, email, go to conferences, go to meetings, meet as many people as you can. Stay in touch with them on a regular basis. And you never know. I mean, I made contacts 20 years ago that came in handy. Just a month ago, I reached out to someone I haven't spoken to in almost 20 years. So you got to keep contacts, keep your circle, keep in touch with them, and it'll pay off in the long run.
Yeah, definitely. Again, I really appreciate you taking the time out. Of course, you're incredibly busy day to sit here and chat and to kind of learn a little bit of what you do. So, again, I really do appreciate that. For everyone who's listening to the podcast, I'm in the process of getting this on Spotify and on Amazon Music and wherever else you listen to your podcast. So, settle down, put pitchforks down, give me some time because the process is not as easy as it seems to be. And of course, I look forward, again, Jonathan, to seeing what you do, and I appreciate you coming on to the podcast.
Yeah, my pleasure, Tristan. Thank you.
Yep. And with that being said, guys, I'll see you in another episode of the Ambition Podcast.